This is our most desperate hour. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope. Perhaps if this message had reached Obi-Wan 10 years earlier, many things would be different. At the end of the Great Jedi Purge, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda understood that the Jedi Order was no more, at least as they knew it. The only thing left to do was to go into exile, to become the stewards of the galaxy's new hope of the next generation. And while the galaxy would go on to forget the Jedi, Obi-Wan's memory was kept close by the fighters of the rebellion, those who believed that a Jedi leader would be their best chance at victory. There is a scenario where Obi-Wan Kenobi throws off the shame of exile and returns to the fight against the Empire, taking up arms as a general once more, but this time in the Alliance to restore the Republic. While this may seem like an easy win for the Rebel Alliance, we actually believe that this would be one of the worst possible outcomes. If General Kenobi fought in the rebellion, everything would burn. Greetings again, Acolytes and Lore Junkies, and welcome back to the Archives. In today's Holocron, we wanted to visit the often debated topic of Obi-Wan actually fighting in the Galactic Civil War, mostly because we wanted to prove that it would be a terrible idea. So join us as we peer through the Force into a dark alternate future, one in which Obi-Wan has forsook his sworn mission on Tatooine. By all accounts, it would seem like having General Kenobi at the helm of a rebel leadership would completely turn the tides of the entire war. There are discussions among Star Wars acolytes who believe that the Galactic Civil War would have been over much sooner had Obi-Wan decided to get involved and to fight. If he had kept up with his training and didn't let his old age hinder him, perhaps he could have been a founding member of the Alliance. Himself, Ahsoka Tano, Mon Mothma, and all the rebel leaders could have banded together against the evil Empire. Obi-Wan's former experience as a war general would have made the rebellion a much more visceral threat to the Empire much sooner. Not only this, but Obi-Wan had intimate knowledge on what was really going on behind the scenes, even more than Ahsoka. He had seen Anakin be dubbed Darth Vader. He was aware of the movements of the Sith, and can see into their plans. Using this knowledge, he would have been invaluable to the Rebel intelligence, as they would foil the plans of Palpatine at every turn. Along with this, Obi-Wan's very name would serve as a beacon of light, a rallying point for all Jedi across the galaxy. Every single survivor of Order 66 still in hiding would hear that General Kenobi was back and taking the fight to the Sith. He was known as a leader of courage, one who inspired many, and Jedi would have come out of the woodwork to join the Alliance much more openly. Perhaps this was Palpatine's greatest fear after all, Jedi overcoming the fear and shame that had been heaped upon them and rising once more as a true threat. But unfortunately, this is a romanticized version of reality. Many of these positive things would indeed happen, but there are very many overlooked forebodings with Obi-Wan reclaiming his mantle as a Jedi General. The first of these impacts the Rebel Alliance directly. One of the reasons that the Rebels made it as far as they did was because they flew under the radar for so many years. In the years leading up to 0 BBY, the Rebellion had the struggle of making themselves heard around the galaxy. They were wanting to make a big enough noise to rally the oppressed to their cause, but for the most part, they looked like many other useless insurgencies that were crushed under the Empire's iron fist. While this did have its downsides, the Rebels neglected to see the positives of this. The big one is that the Empire saw them as an unimportant and an impotent group. They were a job for the ISB. They didn't require the intervention from the very top, and the very top that we speak of is of course Lord Vader and the Emperor. For years, the Alliance was beneath the notice of the Sith, and this has gone down as one of the Empire's greatest mistakes, their arrogance. The Emperor saw this group as a pathetic cell to be wiped out, and Vader wasn't really stimulated by any of the idea of these stepping up insurgents. He was more stimulated by the idea of continuing to hunt Jedi, and this kept him distracted. By this era, Vader had become complacent with his job as an enforcer, and usually only carried out orders from the Emperor himself. The first time Vader really started paying attention to the Rebels was when it got out that there were Jedi involved. When Ezra and Kanan began making a name for themselves on Lothal, they killed the Grand Inquisitor and were constantly evading and defeating all of the Inquisitors sent after them. Vader got involved because he felt strongly about Jedi actively opposing the Empire. The Emperor cared little for the Purge survivors unless they began acting out. Then he would dispatch his apprentice, his rabid dog. But by and large, the Rebels were able to move around without Vader getting involved until the Death Star. The Death Star changed everything, and cemented the Rebel Alliance as a threat worthy of the Sith's full attention. Afterwards, the Rebels were constantly on the back foot for the war, always running while formulating their next battle plan. Had it not been for Luke becoming a Jedi Knight, it's doubtful that the Alliance would have survived much longer under the glare of the Sith. Now imagine if Obi-Wan himself was at the helm of the Alliance from the beginning. All of those years of anonymity the Alliance enjoyed is now completely gone. Vader's obsession with his old master would not allow him to ignore the threat of their uprising, and the Emperor would be highly displeased. With a Jedi like Kenobi leading a rebellion, or even being involved, this would all spell disaster. He already hated Kenobi with a passion for foiling so many of his plans and escaping alive. Many may not realize it, but Palpatine is very interested in Kenobi being taken out of the picture. Vader would chase the rebels with more ferocity than ever before, costing many more lives, and perhaps the success of an entire movement. The natural progression of thought is here to assume that Obi-Wan would take on Vader one-on-one and could actually win again, but this is not so. Their animosity could now no longer be settled with a single duel. If General Kenobi was back, then he's leading his forces against Vader's. Their rivalry has gone beyond lightsabers and involves armies, navies, and the very ideology of the institutions that they serve. The problem? Obi-Wan's command style clashes with the needs of the rebellion. Here's the deal. Obi-Wan was in command of the 212th Attack Battalion. The 212th was a company that was geared towards forward assault and taking out enemy placements in head-on confrontation. Because of this, the general was known to employ very deceptive tactics, gained a reputation as both a trickster and an unrelenting battlefield commander. The problem comes is that the rebellion does not have the resources to facilitate this command style. They worked based on hit-and-run tactics due to their light armament, their lack of proper navy, and a small fighting force. This isn't at all to say that Obi-Wan wouldn't shift his strategy, but the second problem comes was that he would have to be using Jedi tactics, all of which that Lord Vader is extremely familiar with. The 501st, the 212th, Anakin, and Obi-Wan has worked together countless times during the Clone Wars. Vader knows how Obi-Wan thinks. He knows his battle strategies like the back of his own cybernetic hand. Kenobi is a battlefield genius, but so is Darth Vader. The rebels would find themselves frustrated as Vader would destroy them at every turn, or would be close, slowly closing in around them. It would be a massive game of chess. Both men know how the other thinks. They'd constantly be trying to predict the other's next move and set traps. But ultimately, we believe it's the rebels that suffer as Vader would prey upon Obi-Wan and the rebels' greatest weakness, their compassion and their moral compass. It would be nothing for Vader to massacre a population, hold them at blaster point to corner his old master. But there's even a greater cost here. Despite what Owen would want you to hear, his presence on Tatooine was the only reason that the Lars homestead has survived. They were in danger more than a few times from thugs, pirates, and especially the Tusken Raiders. And of course, Obi-Wan always came to the rescue. Kenobi saved their lives more than once, and got a lashing for it from Owen after. One time all of their evaporators were taken by sand people, and Owen planned to rally up the farmers and go after them, just like Klieglar's went after Shmi. Nearly every one of them would have died, including likely Owen himself. In one of the worst scenarios, Luke dies, and with his death goes the hope of the galaxy. Even worse though, Owen dies to the Raiders, causing Luke to grow up with fear for those close to him, and a hatred burning in his heart, retreading Anakin's journey, leading Luke to darkness. With Obi-Wan off fighting in the rebellion, he's not there to help guide the Luke Skywalker that we know on the Jedi path. Luke could fall to the dark side, be found by the Empire or Vader, and trained to become the most terrifying dark side wielder that the galaxy has ever seen. Even if Obi-Wan tries to do both, and alternates between fighting in a war and checking up on Lars, it would still turn out for the worse. Lord Vader and his mad hunt for Obi-Wan would definitely find his way back to Tatooine. This would lead him straight to the Lars homestead, straight to Luke. Even if Obi-Wan overcorrects by trying to train Leia to be a Jedi instead, there are many more reasons why that wouldn't turn out well either. Then there is the soul of the galaxy to consider. The citizens of the galaxy needed to learn from their mistakes pertaining to the Jedi Order. The public came to trust a man who caused them to hate and turn against their protectors. If Obi-Wan continued to openly lead a war effort against the Empire, then all of that would have done was reinforce Palpatine's idea that the Jedi were dangerous revolutionaries, those bent on ruling over the normal citizens of the galaxy. The Empire used crazy amounts of propaganda to help their cause, and they would have jumped on the Jedi's leadership as direct proof of Palpatine's claim. The galaxy would have learned nothing, and the Jedi would not be trusted. The The problem is, even if the rebels believed in the Jedi, Palpatine had already twisted their image of the galaxy at large, and in the doubtful case that the rebels win, the galaxy would learn nothing. They would continue to hate and distrust the Jedi. This was something that even Grandmaster Luke had to deal with. But Luke was different because he appeared in a time of great need when the people needed hope. He was younger, not affiliated with the Order of the Past, and therefore unconnected to their sins. He became the symbol of a bright future, and not the return to form. This, we believe, is the biggest and the most important factor that we need to consider. Both the Jedi of the old and the galaxy at large needed a reset in thought patterns. The Jedi could not come back again and bail the Republic out as they had for 1,000 generations. The Purge, the Empire, all of it. As hard as it was to watch, it was all absolutely necessary in the effort of rebalancing the mentality of the galaxy and rebalancing the Force itself. But the final reason this would have been a terrible idea is a more personal note for our Jedi Obi-Wan. To become a general once again would violate everything he learned in the past war. It would regress anything he learned in exile and destroy him. In issue 3 of the canon Obi-Wan comics, we get a monologue about his thoughts about the Clone Wars, and Obi-Wan reflects by writing this. I am left to ponder yet again, what is a Jedi's purpose in war? I often wrestled with that same question in my battle-scarred past. The Clone Wars tested my resolve again and again. Perhaps the experience tempered me. Of course, Palpatine's treachery proved that in the end, all was folly. The blood that was spilled, the systems that were sundered, it was all a sinister orchestration. A Sith plot for power spotted far too late. And just as I'd been strengthened, I was also perhaps left forever wounded. This ocean of soldiers was led by generals who were monastics, priests, monks. As Jedi, we learned to fight from an early age, and I had already seen my fair share of combat. But this was different. All war, in part, at least concerns domination and dominion. As servants of the Force, we learned that it presides over all like an unseen current. To seek any kind of dominance is to misunderstand the very nature of the Force. Obi-Wan would then go on to retell the events of a battle that he participated in. Within that battle, he caught a glimpse of the system's beautiful sunrise. In that moment, he came to a deep realization, one that he did not want to be there. The hard truth is that despite how good Obi-Wan Kenobi was, he hated being a general. The Revenge of the Sith novel describes him as a phenomenal pilot who doesn't like to fly, a devastating warrior who would rather not fight, a negotiator without peer who frankly prefers to sit alone in a quiet cave and to meditate. There was no part of Obi-Wan Kenobi that enjoyed leading young men to their deaths. He did not gain the thrill of victory like Anakin. His smug and confident veneer in his face of his foes was nothing more than a facade. Obi-Wan needed peace. His exile was filled with sleepless nights constantly going over his mistakes. The lonely days were only his regrets and self-hatred would keep him company. But these were intense character building moments that helped him realign with the Force. He came to settle in peace and quiet, and was able to learn the lessons that the ghost of Qui-Gon was able to teach him. If this life were once again filled with the noise of battle and war, he would not hear or learn anything from Qui-Gon. He'd never become a Force ghost, and his soul would forever be lost in turmoil, never finding balance, and instead, a lifetime of war. And so, my friends, this is why it would have been absolutely terrible if Obi-Wan Kenobi fought in the rebellion during the Galactic Civil War. But we of course want to know what your thoughts are. Does our reasoning here make sense? Does Obi-Wan's own reasoning? Or was there something that we have overlooked? If you think things would have gone better, we would love to hear your explorations and your examinations of it. But until next time, thank you so much for joining us here today, my friends, and may the Force be with you.